I wasn't supposed to be there that night. Honestly, I almost didn't even pull into that parking lot. But if I hadn't, I would have never met her. Or maybe, I should say, I would have never been noticed by her. It was late, past 10, and the lot was nearly empty except for a few cars scattered under the dim yellow streetlights. The air smelled faintly of gasoline and damp concrete, the kind of smell that clings to places where people come and go without staying long. I remember I was tired, worn down from another shift that had dragged me past my breaking point. My car, an old, beat-up Honda with a broken headlight, had been giving me trouble again. I parked it in one of the far corners, hoping it would start when I needed it to. That's when I saw her. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just a woman standing by her sleek black car, the kind of vehicle that looked brand new and way out of my league, one of those luxury models I'd only ever seen in magazines. She looked like she was waiting for someone, or maybe like she was lost in thought. The glow from her car's headlights caught her face, and that's when I realized she wasn't just anyone. She carried herself differently, like the world bent around her presence. Expensive clothes, flawless posture, and something about the way her eyes scanned the space made it clear. This was not someone who ever worried about money. And then something happened that I still can't fully explain. She looked at me. Not a passing glance. Not the kind of look you give a stranger in a parking lot before moving on. Her eyes locked on mine and stayed there, holding me in place. I felt it in my chest like my heart had skipped. I looked away fast, embarrassed. I had no business staring at a woman like that. But when I glanced back, she was still watching me. I didn't know it then, but that look right there, in the middle of that cold, half-empty parking lot was the beginning of everything. I tried to act normal, like her staring didn't bother me, but it did. It bothered me in a way I couldn't shake. I kept fumbling with my car door, pretending I was checking something on the seat, but in reality I was just trying to steady myself. I didn't want to give her a reason to think I was some creep loitering in the shadows. But then I heard the sharp echo of heels against the pavement. At first I thought she was walking past me, maybe heading toward the exit. But the sound grew closer, steady, purposeful. By the time I turned, she was already walking straight toward me. I froze. Her steps didn't match the usual hurried pace of someone alone in a parking lot late at night. No, she walked like she had all the time in the world, like she owned not just the car she came out of but the ground beneath our feet. The closer she got, the more I noticed the details. The way her hair caught the light, the faint scent of perfume carried by the breeze. Everything about her screamed power, wealth, control. I remember thinking, why me? Out of everyone she could talk to, why would she even glance at someone like me? I was broke, struggling to make rent, driving a car that stalled more often than it ran. Meanwhile, she looked like the kind of woman who never had to worry about bills or lines at the grocery store, or whether her paycheck would clear in time. She stopped just a few feet away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her eyes scanned me slowly, and it felt less like she was looking at me and more like she was reading me, like she already knew more about me than I wanted her to. Then she smiled. It wasn't a big smile, not the kind you flash to be polite. It was small, deliberate, and sharp, like she was letting me in on a secret. "You don't belong here, do you?" she said. Her voice was calm, low, almost playful. The words hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't even sure what she meant. Here in the parking lot? Here in this part of town? Or did she mean something else entirely, something deeper that I hadn't admitted to myself? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. I must have looked ridiculous, standing there with my keys in hand, caught between confusion and disbelief. Finally, I managed to say, "I'm just leaving." Her eyes softened for a second, but the smile never faded. "Good," she said. "But maybe don't leave just yet." And right then, in the pit of my stomach, I felt something shift. The way she said it made me pause. Maybe don't leave just yet. Who says that to a stranger in the middle of a half-empty parking lot? Every instinct in me told me to nod politely, get in my car, and drive away before this got any weirder. But something about her tone, firm yet inviting, pulled me in like a rope around my chest. She tilted her head slightly, studying me as though she was trying to place me. "What's your name?" I hesitated before answering. "Daniel," I finally said. My voice sounded smaller than I intended, like I was a kid caught doing something wrong. "Daniel," she repeated slowly, almost testing how it sounded coming from her mouth. "I'm Evelyn." The name fit her. Strong. Elegant. Dangerous even. Before I could think of what to say next, she glanced at my car and let out a small laugh. Not mean, but the kind of laugh someone gives when they notice something obvious. "That's your car?" I felt my face heat up. "Yeah. She's old, but she runs, most of the time." Her smile widened. "Most of the time?" she echoed like she found that funny. She wasn't mocking me though. If anything, it felt like she admired the honesty, the fact that I wasn't pretending to be more than what I was. The silence that followed was strange. Not awkward but heavy, like the air between us had thickened. I shifted on my feet, unsure if I should ask her why she was even talking to me. People like her didn't just strike up conversations with people like me. Finally I said, "So, you, waiting for someone?" Her eyes flicked back to her car, then back to me. "No. I was waiting for something," she said. "And maybe I just found it." The word sent a chill through me. I didn't know what she meant. Part of me wanted to laugh it off, but another part, the deeper, quieter part, knew she wasn't joking. I should have walked away. I should have ended it right there. But instead I stayed. She stepped closer, her perfume stronger now, rich and intoxicating. "Tell me, Daniel," she said softly, "what do you want most right now?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I was too scared of what I might say out loud. And in that silence she looked at me in a way no one ever had before, like she already knew. Her question kept echoing in my head. "What do you want most right now?" It sounded simple, but it wasn't. Nobody had ever asked me something like that, at least not in a way that made it feel like my answer actually mattered. I shifted, gripping my keys tighter, trying to hide the way my hands had started to sweat. I wanted to say something safe, something casual, like "I just want to get home and sleep." But the way she was staring at me, I knew that wouldn't cut it. She would see straight through it. So instead I stayed quiet. Her lips curved again into that same small smile. She didn't push me for an answer. She just seemed satisfied with my silence, like it told her more than words ever could. "You know," she said, almost like she was talking to herself, "most people I meet, I can read them in seconds. Money, ambition, fear. It's always the same three things. But you," she leaned slightly closer, lowering her voice, "you don't fit into any of those boxes." I laughed nervously, though it came out sounding more awkward than I wanted. "That's probably because I don't have much of anything to read." She tilted her head, studying me again. "That's exactly why you interest me." Her words hit me harder than they should have. I wasn't used to being interesting to anyone, especially not someone like her. To most people, I was invisible. Just another tired face in the crowd. A car door slammed somewhere across the lot, and both of us glanced toward the sound. Some guy was getting into his SUV, the echo bouncing off the concrete walls. When I looked back, she was still watching me, completely unbothered. Like the rest of the world didn't even exist for her. "Walk me to my car," she said. It wasn't a question. For a second I thought about saying no. I had no idea who she was or what she wanted from me. Every red flag in my head screamed that this was a bad idea. But then she looked at me with those piercing eyes again, and it felt less like she was asking and more like she was giving me a choice I wasn't allowed to refuse. So I nodded. We walked side by side, her heels clicking against the pavement while my old sneakers scuffed against it. The contrast between us couldn't have been clearer. Her, polished and radiant, me, worn down and ordinary. Yet somehow, in that moment, it felt like we belonged in the same frame. When we reached her car, she stopped and turned to me. "You're different," she said softly. "I like different." And before I could say anything, she reached into her bag, pulled out a sleek black card and pressed it into my hand. "Call me," she said. Then she slid into her car, started the engine and drove away, leaving me standing there with the card burning in my palm like it was something dangerous. I stood there long after her taillights disappeared, staring at that card like it was some kind of forbidden object. It was heavier than a normal business card, smooth and matte black with nothing on the front except a single embossed number in silver. No name, no company, no title. Just the number. I slid it into my pocket, but it felt like it was burning a hole straight through the fabric. The whole ride home I kept thinking about it. I even pulled it out at a red light just to make sure it was real, that I hadn't imagined the whole thing. But it was there, as sharp and solid as the memory of her voice telling me to call her. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing under those dim parking lot lights, smiling at me like she knew something I didn't. My brain kept looping back to her question. "What do you want most right now?" And the worst part was, I had an answer. I just hadn't had the courage to say it. The next day dragged on painfully slow. Work was the same grind as always, scrubbing floors, stocking shelves, watching the clock. But my thoughts weren't there. They were with that card sitting in my wallet, waiting. I told myself 100 times I wasn't going to call. That this was some kind of setup, a game I wasn't equipped to play. But when I got home and sat in the silence of my apartment, staring at the cracks in the ceiling and listening to the faint hum of the fridge, the card called to me. My apartment was small, stuffy, and bare. The kind of place you don't decorate because deep down, you know you're never going to stay long. I had nothing waiting for me there, nothing to look forward to. Finally, I pulled out my phone, dialed the number, and held my breath. It rang only once. Daniel? Her voice answered immediately, smooth and steady, like she'd been expecting my call all along. I froze. I hadn't said a word. She hadn't asked who it was. She just knew. For a moment I thought about hanging up. But then she said, "Good. I was starting to think you'd wait forever." I wasn't sure if I should, I admitted, my throat dry. "I told you to call," she said simply, as if that was the only permission I needed. "Meet me tomorrow. 7 o'clock. I'll text you the address." And just like that, the line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, the silence in the room suddenly suffocating. She hadn't asked if I was free. She hadn't even asked if I wanted to come. She just told me. And the scariest part? I knew I was going to show up. The text came early the next morning. A short, clean message, 7 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. Below it was an address. I didn't recognize it, but when I looked it up, my stomach dropped. It was in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city, the kind of place where the gates alone probably cost more than my entire apartment. All day my nerves twisted tighter. What was I supposed to wear? My closet was a collection of cheap shirts and worn-out jeans. I didn't own anything that could fit into a place like that. In the end, I settled for my cleanest button-up and the least scuffed pair of shoes I had. It wasn't much, but it was the best I could do. By 6:30 I was already on the road, my old Honda rattling like it might fall apart before I even got there. The closer I got, the more out of place I felt. The streets grew wider, smoother, lined with trees that were probably planted just to look expensive. Every house looked like it had been pulled from a magazine. Towering gates, manicured lawns, massive driveways. When I finally turned onto her street, I almost drove past. Her house, or mansion really, didn't just sit on the block. It owned the block. High walls, wrought iron gates, and a driveway that curved like a private road. I stopped at the gate, my headlights bouncing off the polished metal. Before I could even press the intercom, the gates swung open slowly, silently, as if they'd been waiting just for me. My chest tightened as I drove in. The driveway seemed endless, the kind that made you feel small the longer you were on it. By the time I parked near the steps, my palms were slick with sweat, and my heart felt like it was trying to escape my ribs. She was waiting for me. Evelyn stood at the top of the steps, dressed in a long black dress that clung to her frame like it was designed just for her. The porch lights glowed behind her, turning her into a silhouette, almost unreal. She didn't wave. She didn't call out. She just watched as I climbed out of my car and made my way toward her, each step heavier than the last. "You came," she said when I finally reached her. "I said I would," I replied, though we both knew she hadn't given me a choice. She smiled faintly. "Good. I like people who keep their word." Inside, the house was nothing like I had ever seen. High ceilings, marble floors, walls lined with paintings that probably cost more than I would make in a lifetime. Everything was sharp, polished, intimidating. It didn't feel like a home, it felt like a statement. And yet, despite all of it, my eyes kept going back to her. The way she moved across the room, slow and deliberate, like every step had been rehearsed. She poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one without asking if I even drank. "To new beginnings," she said softly, raising her glass. I clinked mine against hers, though my hand trembled slightly. And as the wine touched my lips, bitter and rich, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just stepped into something I would never escape from. The wine went down slowly, burning a little in my throat. I wasn't used to stuff like that. It tasted heavy, too rich for me, but I forced myself to sip anyway. Evelyn's eyes never left me as I drank, like she was watching every detail, every twitch of my face. "You're nervous," she said after a moment. Not accusing, not mocking. Just stating it like a fact. "Wouldn't you be?" I asked, half smiling, trying to play it off. "This place it's a lot." Her lips curved again. "You'll get used to it." The word stuck in my mind. "You'll get used to it." Like she already saw me here, like she had already decided I belonged in her world, whether I believed it or not. She led me through the house, and with every room we passed, the scale of her wealth became clearer. Crystal chandeliers, massive mirrors, furniture that looked too delicate to sit on. I felt clumsy just walking beside her, like I didn't deserve to breathe the same air in a place like this. Finally, she stopped in a smaller room, though it was still bigger than my entire apartment. It was lined with bookshelves, floor to ceiling, filled with leather-bound volumes that smelled faintly of dust and age. A fire crackled in the corner, and the light flickered against her face, softening her sharp features. "This is where I come to think," she said. It's the only part of the house that feels like it belongs to me. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded, running my eyes over the shelves. There was something strange about her admitting that. She owned the entire house, yet she only felt like she owned this one room. She motioned for me to sit on the couch near the fire. I sank into it, trying to hide how out of place I felt. She sat across from me, legs crossed, glass of wine still in hand. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy but not empty. It was like she was waiting for me to break it. Finally, I asked, "Why me? You could talk to anyone. People who actually fit in here. So why me?" Her eyes flickered in the firelight, and for the first time she didn't answer right away. She took a slow sip of her wine, set the glass down on the table, and leaned forward slightly. "Because," she said softly, "you don't want anything from me." The words stunned me. I almost laughed. Didn't want anything? She was a billionaire, sitting in a house that felt more like a museum than a home. Of course I wanted something. Anyone would. A life like hers was impossible not to envy. But as much as I tried to argue with myself, I realized she wasn't entirely wrong. I hadn't called her because of her money. I hadn't followed her into that house because I wanted a piece of her wealth. I'd done it because of her. Because something about her pulled me in even when I knew I shouldn't get close. She leaned back again, eyes never leaving mine. "That's why you interest me. Everyone else sees me as a door to something they don't have. But you," she paused, her lips curling just slightly. "You look at me and see me." The fire cracked louder, as if it was punctuating her words. My chest tightened and I couldn't bring myself to look away. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was peeling me open and seeing exactly who I was, and I wasn't sure if I wanted them to stop. Her words lingered in the air long after she said them, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were meant to trap me. "You see me." It sounded simple, but coming from her, it felt like a kind of declaration, a claim. I set my glass down, my palms damp against the stem. "I don't even know you," I said quietly, almost like I was reminding myself as much as her. Her smile didn't fade. "Then let me fix that." For the next hour she talked. Not about business deals or money or the things I expected someone like her to bring up. She talked about her childhood, her mother's coldness, her father's obsession with appearances, how she'd grown up surrounded by people but always felt alone. The kind of things you don't admit to just anyone. I sat there listening, caught between disbelief and unease. On the outside she was untouchable, a woman who could buy and sell the world 10 times over without blinking. But the way she spoke that night, she sounded almost human. Fragile even. Still, something about it didn't sit right. Her stories were too polished, too perfectly delivered. Like she'd told them before, maybe to herself in the mirror, maybe to others who'd sat exactly where I was sitting now. I couldn't tell what was real and what was a performance. At one point, she leaned closer, her eyes locked on mine. "Do you know what the hardest part of being me is?" I shook my head. "It's that no one ever says no to me," she whispered. "Not once. Not ever. Imagine that, Daniel. Imagine living in a world where every door opens, every person bends, every word you speak becomes law. You'd think it would feel like freedom, wouldn't you? But it doesn't. It feels like a cage." Her voice trembled just enough to make me believe her, but there was still something sharp beneath it. Something that told me she wasn't just sharing a truth, she was testing me. "Do you want me to say no to you?" I asked carefully. She smiled again, and this time it was colder. "No. I want you to never want to." The fire popped, and a piece of burning wood shifted, collapsing inward. The sound made me flinch, but she didn't move an inch. She just kept staring at me with that intensity that made it hard to breathe. By the time I left that night, it was past midnight. She walked me to the door, and before I could even thank her for the evening, she leaned in close, her lips near my ear. "You'll come back," she whispered. It wasn't a question. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, the mansion looming behind me like some sleeping beast, I realized something terrifying. She was right. The days after that night felt strange, like I was moving through two different worlds. In the daylight, I still lived my old life. Work, bills, the same crumbling apartment with its flickering kitchen light and peeling paint. But at night, whenever my phone buzzed and her name appeared, I stepped into hers. It didn't matter what I was doing. If Evelyn said come over, I went. If she sent an address, I showed up. Sometimes it was her mansion. Other times, it was restaurants so expensive the waiters looked at me like I'd wandered in by mistake. A couple of times, it was hotels where entire floors seemed to be reserved just for her. Every time I thought I might start getting used to it, she found a way to remind me that I didn't belong. The way people bowed their heads slightly when she walked into a room, the way doors opened without her even touching them, the way money slipped from her hands like it meant nothing at all. But what unsettled me the most wasn't her money. It was her attention. When she looked at me, it wasn't casual. It wasn't like anyone else ever had. It was consuming, like she was memorizing me piece by piece, testing me against some invisible checklist I could never see. One night, over dinner at her place, I finally asked, "Why me?" "Really? You could have anyone." She put down her fork, folded her hands neatly, and stared at me for a long time. "Because you're mine," she said. The words landed like a punch in the gut. Not "I like you. Not "I want you. You're mine." I laughed nervously, hoping she'd laugh too, but she didn't. She just kept looking at me, completely serious. "You don't believe me now," she said calmly. "But you will." Her confidence shook me. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty, like she'd already seen the future and knew exactly how this would play out. And the worst part? Deep down, some part of me believed her. That night, when I finally drove home, I caught myself checking the rearview mirror more times than usual, half expecting to see her black car trailing behind me. My phone buzzed once as I pulled into my parking lot. It was a text from her. "Sweet dreams, Daniel. Don't forget, you belong to me now." My hands went cold. I stared at the words glowing on the screen, my chest tightening, and I realized that this wasn't just infatuation anymore. This was something darker. Something I might not be able to walk away from. Her words stayed with me like a shadow I couldn't shake. "You belong to me now." It was the kind of thing you'd expect someone to say in a movie, not in real life. But Evelyn wasn't just anyone, and the more time I spent with her, the harder it became to tell where real life ended and her world began. I tried pulling back once. I ignored her call, let her text sit unread, told myself I'd had enough. For a day I thought maybe I could slip out quietly, go back to the life I knew, even if it was small, even if it was hard. At least it was mine. But then the next morning there was a knock at my door. Not the light kind, not someone asking politely to be let in. It was firm. Heavy. Final. When I opened it, one of her drivers stood there in a black suit, holding a card. The same matte black as the one she'd given me that night in the parking lot. On the back, in her perfect handwriting, were 3 words. "Don't test me." My stomach dropped. I didn't even remember closing the door, but somehow I was back inside, pacing the floor, clutching that card so hard it bent. That was the moment I realized what I was really dealing with. This wasn't just a woman who'd noticed me in a parking lot. This was someone who had decided I was hers, and people like her, they didn't lose. From then on, it didn't matter if I wanted to see her. I always did. Sometimes it was dinners, sometimes just sitting in her study by the fire while she talked and I listened. And other times, it was silence, her staring at me with those eyes that saw through everything I tried to hide. I started losing track of days. Work became an afterthought. Friends stopped calling because I never picked up. My world shrank until it was only her and the places she wanted me to be. And yet, I couldn't stop going back. Every time I thought about leaving, I remembered the look in her eyes that first night, the way she saw me like no one else ever had. It was terrifying, but it was also intoxicating. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. I was chosen. But being chosen by Evelyn wasn't a gift. It was a sentence. The last time I saw her, she stood by her window, the city lights glowing behind her, and she said something I still hear in my head every night before I fall asleep. "Daniel, you could run for the rest of your life. Change your name. Disappear. But no matter where you go, you'll still be mine. Because I don't fall in love often, and when I do, it's forever." Her voice was calm, steady, certain. And the terrifying thing is, I believed her. So if you're listening to this, if you've ever wondered what it's like to be wanted by someone who has everything, let me tell you, it's not a dream. It's not a fairy tale. It's a cage with gold bars. And me? I'm still inside it. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and turn on your notifications.